All right. Welcome, everybody, including the new folks who have trickled in. As you can see, folks are introducing themselves in the chat, just saying their names, where they're from, and then a piece of policy they're excited for. So feel free to join in and let us know. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So if we could have the slides shared. Thank you, Jen. I'm Emma Kelly. I'm the New Economy Field Coordinator out of our Norton office in far, far Southwest Virginia. We will have our other folks introduce themselves as they go through the slides. We know that we're about to throw a lot of information at you, so we will be sending out information with links after this webinar. And there will also be a Q&A portion after the presentation. So feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat, and we will be monitoring those to answer after everyone is done talking. All right, I will pass it on to whoever is speaking first.
So here's some of the information that'll help you be prepared for the General Assembly session this year. Even-numbered years mean it's a longer legislative session, so we're looking at one that started today and goes for 60 days, and it ends on March 9th. The next thing to know is the General Assembly always meets in Richmond. So you have options to attend meetings, testify at hearings, have appointments with your elected officials in person in Richmond, but virtual options are also offered for meetings, testimony, and helping get the policies you want in front of legislators. So think about both options. There has been a shift in the number of one party versus another in the House of Delegates. So the power is split between the House of Delegates and the Senate, but the Democrats are currently in the majority for both the House of Delegates at 51-49 and in the Senate 21-19. Just for context, the administration is Republican, so there is still some power split among the branches of government there. But just some quick facts on what to know about this year's General Assembly. And I think this is over to you, Emma.
Yes, thank you, Jess. I'm sorry, I'm having some internet problems down here in Lee County. There are lots of opportunities for folks to get involved. You can see some of them on the slides. There's always constituent meetings. This is a chance to get your voice directly into your legislator's ear, either in person or through Zoom. So let us know if you would like help scheduling a meeting. We also have designated lobby days. You can see January 30th, January 31st, and February 6th with different coalition partners. These lobby days typically have different focuses. You can see there's a water lobby day, an affordable energy lobby day, but depending on your availability and when you can come up to Richmond, we can work with you to make sure that you're lobbying for what you're passionate about. And then finally, we offer opportunities for you to take action by emails, letters, and making phone calls. We do that through our action alerts, which we send out through our email listserv. So if you haven't signed up for our email list, make sure to do that. And that way you'll be kept in the loop.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Peter Anderson. I'm our Director of State Energy Policy here at Appalachian Voices. I'm based in our Charlottesville office, but during the General Assembly session, I moved to Richmond. So I'll be there for the duration of the legislative session, talking with our legislators every day. So this is kind of an overview slide of the kind of general topic areas that we are focused on as an organization. And if you joined us last year, this list is fairly familiar because these are ongoing campaigns and battles. So we've got some good climate and clean energy laws on the books that our team will continue to work on defending this year. That's always necessary when there is divided government, as Jessica explained a moment ago. We continue to work on making energy more affordable for all Virginians, expanding access to solar energy in Virginia. Jessica's going to tell you later about large-scale metal mining and things we can do to avoid pollution threats from those activities. We're also going to talk a little bit about access to basic essential services and utilities. And of course, at Appalachian Voices, we are very concerned with the large gas pipelines that have been in development in our region for many years, and making sure that they are scrutinized heavily. So I think with the next slide, I will kick us off talking a little bit about defense. And one thing I should mention, I'm really happy that everyone got to put into the chat. You all had the opportunity to introduce yourself and talk about what policies or topic areas excite you and you're interested in this year. If you don't hear us talk about it, it doesn't mean that nobody's working on it. There is a larger, I would recommend the Virginia Conservation Network if you don't hear us talk about your specific interest today, because there are many, many organizations in Virginia doing good work. So I saw a lot of people talk about data centers. You won't hear us talk about data center bills in this presentation today, but I know there are a number of groups working on that issue. So let me talk about our defensive priorities. And the other challenge of having this webinar today, where the General Assembly has just gavelled in minutes ago, is that we don't have bill numbers for everything. Not every bill has been filed yet. So there will still be more that we learn in the hours remaining today and tomorrow, and even over the weekend and into next week. New bills will continue to be filed. So we don't have the total lay of the land today, but these are sort of, we can talk about things that we know that are happening, bills that have been filed, and what our expectations are. So without further ado, we do expect continued need to defend the clean energy policies and climate policies that are already part of Virginia law today. So one bill that has come up, House Bill 397, is something that we will oppose. It repeals a lot of the current requirements in the law today for our agencies to regulate carbon dioxide emissions from power facilities. So that'll be one thing that we do on defense. I would also expect, if folks have been following the sort of policy landscape in Virginia for a little while now, you know that we have something called the Virginia Clean Economy Act, or the VCEA. That passed in the 2020 session, and it created a clean energy standard for our electric power sector. Since that bill passed, every year there are bills filed that attempt to weaken the clean energy standard, add resources to that standard that are not clean, that do produce pollution. So that's one thing you see at the bottom of this slide. We do expect the gas industry to be lobbying hard to include different forms of methane gas in the clean energy standard, and we'll be working to keep that clean energy standard clean. The next slide, please. Another priority for Appalachian Voices is the affordability of our electric power. And I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who's participated with us over the years. We had a huge victory last year, passing the Affordable Energy Act. That was really necessary because our two largest electric utilities, Dominion and Appalachian Power Company, or AEP as folks call it, they weren't able to be fully regulated by the State Corporation Commission for about the last 16 years. But the Affordable Energy Act that legislators passed, and a lot of them heard from you, and we really appreciate that, restored that full regulatory authority to the SEC so that they can keep costs down. That doesn't mean the issue's over just because we had a big victory last year. So I've got on the slide here a few of the bills that have already been filed that we're supportive of. So one bill, we talk about the clean energy transition and the Virginia Clean Economy Act. We know that it doesn't come for free, but these bills that are on the screen right now would create requirements for the lowest cost implementation of the energy transition. and making sure that our State Corporation Commission allows more third-party competition in clean energy resources and considers energy efficiency fully in implementing our clean energy policy. And I think we can pass the mic to the next person in the next slide.
Yes, thank you, Peter. So another of our priorities, which has been a priority for a couple of years now, is bringing shared solar to communities in Southwest Virginia. So shared solar is currently accessible to folks living in the eastern portion of the state, but it is not established in Appalachian Power territory. So shared solar is beneficial for communities because it means you don't have to buy or own your own solar panels, so it's more affordable, which means it's good for buildings that might not have a roof suitable for solar. It's good for people who are renting and might not own their own homes. And it's also beneficial for businesses, nonprofits, and local governments. So we tried last year to get this passed, and we're ready to give it another run. There are 2 bills focused on shared solar this year. There is House Bill 108, Senate Bill 255. This would focus on expanding shared solar into APCO territory. It's being sponsored by Delegate Sullivan in the House and Senator Surraville in the Senate. And then there is House Bill 106, Senate Bill 253, that makes a few tweaks to Dominion shared solar program, adjusting their minimum bill and program size. And that is also being sponsored by Delegate Sullivan and Senator Surraville. And I'll pass it on to Robert for the next slide.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's so wonderful to be with you. I'm Robert Kell, the New Economy Program Manager based in our Norton office. Unlike Peter, I am not moving to Richmond. So some budget stuff. This is a budget year, meaning that the governor has given the General Assembly his budget priorities, and there are a number of things in that budget. And then our legislators have the opportunity to submit amendments to that budget and work to see those priorities funded. So this isn't, I'm going to start in this bottom right-hand corner. This isn't a budget item, but it is a bill that will affect the budget, and that's Senator Hackworth's bill to see the Virginia Brownfield and Renewable Mine Energy Fund. There's a provision in the bill language currently that says it must be funded by the federal government. So we're going to remove that. And we're going to make it easier to then see above that box Senator Deed's budget amendment that he's going to put in for $20 million to see that fund actually allocated money and prioritize siting solar on former mine sites and other brownfield sites across the state. As we're scanning over the budget and scanning over budget amendments as they come in this week, we're going to be looking for anything that touches our priorities, obviously, but any budgetary items that prioritize citing any type of energy technology, we're going to do our very best to ensure that we're advocating that those funds also come along with community engagement strategies and resources so that communities that might face any type of energy technology have the resources to learn and to be educated about those technologies. I will pass it to the next person.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks everybody for tuning in today. My name is Jessica Sims. I'm the Virginia Field Coordinator at Appalachian Voices, and I'm based in the Richmond area. I'm really excited to talk to you about a couple pieces of legislation that are meant to be protective of our water and especially our drinking water. So the first 2 are from Delegate Simons, and they are part of a years-long effort to educate and prepare for the potential threat of large-scale metals mining in Virginia. You can see in the image there that sort of orange streak is where there's a concentration of potential gold mining, but there are other metals, including copper, zinc, and lead, that are in different counties in Virginia along what is known as the gold pyrite belt. So this is an issue that is deeply concerning, that there may be a new extractive industry sort of returning to the Commonwealth. We had small scale mining in the 1900s, 1800s, 1900s. But thanks to Friends of Buckingham, it was revealed that an exploratory company had been performing exploratory drilling operations in Buckingham County. And so that resulted in a bill being brought forth to study the issue. And that was from the National Academy of Sciences. And so to know about large-scale metal mining, because of the way it is processed, this is both an open pit mine or an underground mine. It's very water intensive. It creates a lot of toxic waste. And for large-scale gold mining, a lot of companies use cyanide in their processing. So the National Academy of Sciences specifically highlighted a couple of threats from that industry to Virginia's water, and that's contamination from cyanide, which could be catastrophic based on how many people in Virginia depend on the James River, the proximity of this belt to the James River and its watershed, essentially the potential impacts or contamination of drinking water for millions of Virginians. They also found that there is just not enough public engagement at the exploratory level, public notification at the exploratory level, or just about the issue overall. And so Delegate Simons has worked for a number of years to help build educational awareness about this issue, and again is bringing forth legislation to help us prevent some of these most alarming threats from this potential industry. So last year, she did bring forth a ban to prohibit the use, a bill to prohibit the use of cyanide and cyanide compounds in metals mining processing. And that is back again this year. It's HB 85. And then she's also listened to the NAS study and reacted to one of their suggestions, which is to improve public engagement specific to exploratory drilling. And so there is a bill, HB 84, which creates a public notification process for exploratory drilling. It specifically requires publishing a notice in a newspaper, notifying the governing body of the locality, so that could be the Board of Supervisors, and then notifying residences and properties within 500 yards of the property lines. So one way to think about this is both of these bills are building blocks for a larger awareness and preparation for this potential industry as we look to see what other ways we can keep Virginia's water safe. We're really thankful to Delegate Simons for her continued work on this issue and to all of the co-patrons, and very excited to say that both bills, HB 84 and HB 85, have bipartisan support. The other water quality issue that we are very excited about this year is being brought forth by Delegate Lawford. Virginia has seen, as many of y'all on today's webinar know, the disastrous impacts when there is insufficient review, and fracked gas pipeline construction can create significant harm to Virginia's water resources. As pictured here, the disastrous Mountain Valley Pipeline is the epitome of that. And so, although there has been permitting standards which have improved over the years, there are still ways to make them stronger. And so one of the ways in which we are hoping legislation can achieve that this year is looking at the existing permitting standards, which apply to pipelines that are 36 inches and above, and reducing that requirement for review to be inclusive of pipelines 24 inches and above in diameter. So the bill that Delegate Lawford has put forth, HB 524, requires applicants for a permit for a natural gas transmission pipeline with a diameter of 24 inches or more to submit a separate application, erosion and sediment control plan, and a stormwater management plan to the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. So currently a pipe of that size does not have that requirement. So this is for projects that are subject to a certificate of public convenience and necessity under the Federal Natural Gas Act. So we're talking about interstate pipelines. So again, we appreciate everybody's years-long work on these issues as we try to strengthen what is in the code and apply that to projects that are not yet under construction. This is part of a years-long effort to improve review regulations. And I will pass it to our next speaker.
Looks like it's back to me. So I focus a lot of my time on utility regulations, so this falls under that umbrella. if you followed us last year, you know that we've been working on this issue really since the start of the pandemic, when some utilities, it came to our attention that some utilities, including water utilities, were turning off people's water, heat, and electric power for non-payment, despite the fact that we were in the middle of a pandemic health emergency, when people couldn't leave their homes and needed those essential services. And research from our staff revealed that most states have a policy on the books that prevent utilities from shutting off essential services for non-payment when under extreme circumstances, like a public health emergency, like just freezing temperatures or heat waves. And so you see this map of the United States on this slide. Virginia is one of about 6 or 7 states that has no policy protecting vulnerable people from having their utilities cut off during these extreme circumstances. So we're trying to play catch up and have our legislators pass a policy that would prohibit utility companies from turning people's services off, even if they're behind on their bills, when it is freezing cold, when it is a heat wave, when there's a public health emergency. So we are really thankful for Delegate Irene Shin has introduced House Bill 906 that would introduce this policy dealing with this issue. We know that Senator Aird is going to carry a companion bill. We just don't have the bill number yet. And so we can update this hopefully before we send it out to folks. And I think I'll pass the mic to, Matt, I think you're up.
I'll say, I think maybe we can push questions to the very end rather than take them right now. Or do we want to answer questions in the chat at the moment?
I think we can push those till the end.
Okay. Matt Allenbaum, the Virginia campaign coordinator, and I'm based in Roanoke. And as we go along, if you have questions about any of these policies that we've brought up or others, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll handle those at the end. And go ahead and go to the next slide. Yeah, so before we wrap this up and let you all kind of get back to your day, we wanted to let you know about, we wanted to talk briefly about how you can connect with your lawmakers and steer the bills that we've talked about, as well as others that are going to be dropping here in the next couple of days in the right direction. So next slide. So with redistricting and the recent election recently, it's really important to know who your legislator is, because it may be a different person than it was, or different people than it was just a few months ago. I just dropped a link in the chat. That'll take you to a website, put in your home address, and it'll bring up your delegate member, your senator, as well as your national representatives. And it has a lot of really important information in there about how to contact them, what committees they're on, where their office in Richmond is, if they have a local office in your district, what legislation they are a patron on or co-patron on, or any proposed budget amendments that they have put forth. Before you reach out to any of your legislators, it's really important just to do a few minutes of homework. Know what bill or bills you want to talk about. If it's a bill in the House of Delegates, it's going to be listed as HB and then a number. For example, the metal mining bills that just mentioned, HB 84 and HB 85, there's going to be in the House. And if it's a Senate bill, it's going to start with SB and then followed by a number. Do you oppose or support the bill? And then what's really important about this is your story and your why. Tell your why and how this is going to impact you and your family and your business and your community and your district. You know, if you are a parent in a rural area in Buckingham County and you get your water from a well and you're concerned about the expansion of mining in your area and you want to make sure that cyanide is not contaminating your groundwater, that's a really important and powerful and impactful statement that you can make about how it's going to impact you and your community. Okay, you can go ahead and click to the next slide, please. And there's a couple of different ways that you can have your voice heard. Drop another link in the chat here. And all of these links are going to be provided after the webinar. So if you're not able to follow along with all the links, don't worry about it. You'll get it in your inbox here soon. So you can talk to your delegate or your senator via phone. In that link that I provided earlier, their phone number will be there. Be prepared to leave a message with your delegate, your senator, or their staff. It's going to be that same information that we just talked about. Your name, where you live, the bill number, whether you support or oppose the bill, and then your why and your story and how it's going to impact you, your community, and your district. You can also sign up to testify in person or virtually at a committee hearing on that link there that I just dropped. So that's a way that you can make your voice heard before a bill hits the full House. Go ahead and next slide. You can also email your legislator directly or submit written comments to a committee. And this is really, really important if you know that your legislator is on a committee where a bill is going to be heard, that sending that message to that committee can really have a lot of impact on the way that votes trend. And then next slide, please. And there's going to be a lot of upcoming opportunities to talk to your legislator in person. The Virginia Conservation Network is hosting a pair of lobby days on January 30th and 31st, focused on water and conservation issues in the Commonwealth. And the Affordable Energy Coalition is hosting a lobby day on February 6th around clean energy issues. And that one, there's also an opportunity to attend a virtual training the evening beforehand to get up to speed on some of the talking points and bills in a most timely manner. Both of these, all of these lobby days are going to be hosted out of St. Paul's Episcopal Church, which is just down the street from the General Assembly building. So you can grab coffee and a snack, take a break in between talking with your delegate and your senator, and just relax and connect with folks from Appalachian Voices and other activists and interested folks in the area. Next slide. And then finally, you can stay up to date with what Appalachian Voices and our work is doing for you in the General Assembly. You can sign up for, let me drop another one here. You can sign up to become an ardent activist and receive timely updates, no more than 3 a week, with action items, news from the General Assembly, what's happening in Richmond during the General Assembly session. And you can also follow us on all the social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, X, which is formerly Twitter, and the work that we are doing, not just here in Virginia, but all across Appalachia. So maybe we have an opportunity to answer some of the questions that I saw were dropped in the chat.
Yes, thank you so much, Matt. So we do have a few questions both in chat and the Q&A. And if you have any questions, feel free to keep putting them in. We have a few minutes to answer them. So I'm going to read these out loud and then let whoever on the panel is best suited answer. So a couple of these have already been answered in chat, but I'm going to read them out anyway. The first is, are there any threats to lifting the ban on uranium mining?
And I can reiterate what the short answer I put in the chat. So if folks aren't aware, many years ago, a uranium mining ban was put into place, I believe through the person who was governor at that time. And that issue prohibited uranium mining. I believe it was centered in Pittsylvania County, Virginia. And there were legal challenges to that ban, and that's been litigated. And in each case, the ban on uranium mining was upheld in court. I have not seen or heard about any legislative efforts to change that in Virginia so far. If we hear about it, we'll raise the awareness.
Thanks, Peter. And I think this next question will go to you as well. Is there any legislative action to keep Virginia in RGGI?
So this is a little bit of an unknown at this time. What's happened, RGGI is, for those who aren't familiar, it's the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. It's a market-based carbon dioxide emission program. It's a regulation, right? And so Virginia joined RGGI legislatively in the 2020 legislative session. And every year there have been bills introduced to pull Virginia out of RGGI. Those bills have all failed. At this time, the governor has taken executive action to pull Virginia out of the RGGI carbon market. And that action is currently being litigated in court. As to whether there are legislative solutions this session, I would say stay tuned, a little bit TBD. A lot of times legislators are loath to pass a bill that would directly impact a pending lawsuit. So a lot of times they say, wait till next year. Let's see what the outcome is in court. So we'll keep you updated when we hear more.
All right, our next question from the chat. Given that nuclear energy is not clean energy, will we oppose any bills to support small modular nuclear reactors in Southwest Virginia?
I can kick off an answer to that, and my colleagues can help me if I get anything wrong. So starting with the assumption in the question, the status today is Virginia produces about 30 to 33% of its electricity from nuclear resources today. These are large, old-fashioned nuclear power plants. One's just up the road in Central Virginia from me. There's one in Surrey County. The question and a lot of the questions are around the new technology that's been promised by energy developers around modular nuclear, which is supposed to be different from those nuclear power plants that were built in the 50s and 60s and 70s, in that they are supposed to be smaller and factory built. And what we have seen is there are no commercially operating small modular reactors in the United States at this time. The one that was supposed to be operating in Utah in the upcoming years recently lost its investors. So I don't see it as something that's like a threat on the horizon right now. But one thing that energy companies want to do is, because it's a very expensive resource, they'd like to benefit from owning a resource that they can charge customers for that's really costly. So one thing that we did last year is we opposed a bill that would have allowed Dominion Energy to own and operate a number of small modular reactors without any sort of cost protection. So these things could have cost, by our estimates, depending on the number of reactors, could have cost captive ratepayers nearly $40 billion. So we certainly opposed that bill. We've had a long history of ratepayer protection in Virginia in terms of our advocacy work. So I don't know if that's fully answers the question, but I think there will be similar attempts this year by some other, whether it's Dominion or other companies who want to cash in on an expensive resource like that. And we will, of course, continue to try to do what's in the best interests of customers.
Great job, Peter. Two things. One is actually a question to you. The first, though, is currently there is no legislation to cite SMRs in Southwest Virginia. That it was as updated as of 10 minutes ago, so that could change. But as of 10 minutes ago, there aren't bills that specifically try to cite this technology in the coal fields. Peter, can you talk a little bit about what I also heard in Sharon's question, and there is a piece of legislation, what it looks like to try to make some emergent technologies like nuclear and hydrogen classified as renewable under VCEA?
Yeah, happy to dive into that. So under the law today, under Virginia Clean Economy Act, nuclear is not counted as a renewable energy resource, but it is. So what the clean economy requires Appalachian Power and Dominion Power to meet a clean energy standard, and it has a schedule, right? So by 2050, both companies are going to have to prove that they are providing 100% clean energy. And so that we are on a schedule now that's like a smaller percentage, and that percentage builds over time. But if that total amount of electric energy, whatever that number is, in terms of gigawatts of electricity produced or megawatt hours of electricity sold to their customers, under the current law, existing nuclear does not count towards that total. So it is neither incentivized. There's nothing in the clean energy standard saying you have to add more new nuclear. In fact, it's consciously not included. So existing nuclear basically is fine under the current law, but it does not encourage or even allow for any new nuclear under that standard. So to Robert's point, there have been bills introduced that would add both hydrogen, which today hydrogen is sourced by chemically pulling apart methane gas to create the clean hydrogen. And then there's been attempts to add hydrogen to the clean energy standard, and there have been attempts to add nuclear to a clean energy standard. And we, and I think the entire environmental community, our allies in Richmond, have all opposed those efforts.
Great. Thank you so much, Peter and Robert. The next question is, when is crossover? That is February 13th. Peter, I believe this next question is also for you. Is there a House Bill 28 by Delegate Mike Jones?
Does it exist? Is that the question?
That it appears to be.
I believe so. And I think I talked to Delegate Jones about that yesterday, but let me check the number. There's so many numbers, we get thousands of bills here. So if you'll bear with me, I'll come back and answer that one in a second.
Absolutely. Going on to the next one. Do we see any chance of a carbon fee or tax in Virginia, given the governor's view on RGGI?
So to my knowledge, there are no pending efforts to create a new carbon fee or carbon tax. Of course, a tax is Governor Youngkin's characterization of Virginia's participation in the RGGI carbon market. But I'm unaware of any efforts to create a new tax or fee in lieu of the present, like I said, under existing law, Virginia is required to participate in the RGGI carbon market.
The questions keep rolling in. Is there any legislation or other effort to address problems with the SCC, such as corporate capture by Dominion Energy?
So this has been a long-standing battle in Virginia, and we've made a lot of progress in recent years in terms of the influence that monopoly utilities who are able to give a lot of campaign donations to legislators who then write the laws that then govern the utility. You can see how that's a conflict of interests. And these companies, because they have a monopoly in their service territory, they're supposed to serve the public without, indiscriminately at the lowest possible cost. So that's why we have a regulator in the State Corporation Commission. So I would, first of all, reiterate what I talked about earlier in the presentation about last year's Affordable Energy Act, restoring the State Corporation Commission's authority to fully regulate Dominion Energy and Appalachian Power, which are the two largest monopoly utilities in Virginia. I am also aware that there's a bill that is filed just about every session that would prohibit those utility companies that have those monopolies from making campaign donations to legislators. Those bills have not passed the legislature in the past. I believe there is a bill that if it hasn't been introduced yet, it will be introduced again this year. And it seems like a good idea to me.
Thanks, Peter. This is from Robert Walters, has ALEC demonstrated its influence on current energy bills?
So what Robert's referring to, we sometimes refer to as ALEC. It's the American Legislative Exchange. What does the C stand for? Coalition, maybe. This is sort of a national group that is known for lobbying the federal government as well as state governments on behalf of fossil fuel interests. And one thing that Dan says that C stands for conference. There was an ALEC styled bill. What ALEC does is create model legislation that they can try to pass in numerous states. And so there was a bill that got introduced a couple of years ago in Virginia that kind of seemed like it probably came from ALEC that would have basically prohibited state and local governments from pursuing building electrification policies. It said something like, state and local governments can't do anything to limit the use of gas in buildings. So as we try to transition to a clean energy economy, we know that buildings are significant sources of carbon emissions in terms of what we combust to heat our buildings and cooking and everything else, right? So electrification is a big interest. I think we might see some progress on building electrification, at least this session, in terms of what may come out of the House and Senate. I don't know what the governor will do with those bills. So that's always the trick with a purple state and divided government. All the branches have to sign off on the same language. But yeah, I'm happy to say that bill that I suspect, the sort of anti-electrification bill that I suspect was an ALEC bill in the past, we defeated with our allies 2 years in a row. So I'll leave it there.
Maybe referred to HB 28, the Mike Jones bill.
Yeah, Delegate Jones, yes, there's a HB 28, which does a number of different things. This is on our radar. It's a good bill from Delegate Jones. It basically does three things. It would introduce a moratorium on new fossil fuel projects in Virginia. It would include language that would support workers who are transitioning as the economy shifts from a fossil fuel-based economy to a clean energy economy. And it also includes some environmental justice protection language in it. It's a really good bill. So happy that Delegate Jones is, as a new legislator, he's going to have he's got a handful in that bill, and I wish him all the success. It's a good bill.
All right, I believe that is all of the questions that we have received. Oh, I lied. Will we be supporting legislation for more regulations for data centers?
So the data center thing, a lot of our ally, Virginia Conservation Network groups who are in Northern Virginia are taking the lead on the data center policies because it impacts their backyard. In terms of the folks who are active in Prince William and Loudoun and Fauquier, and down into starting to creep data center development, starting to creep towards Culpeper and Central Virginia. There's a lot of really good, really smart people working on that issue. For Appalachian Voices, I think the biggest intersection with kind of our strategic plan is what happens when data centers drive electricity demand higher and higher when we're trying to power our grid with 100% clean energy and battery storage. And what does it do? Is there an impact to reliability? And what is the stress on the grid when you cluster these things in the same place with some of the same electric switches, same substations? So it's a really complex issue. It's something that we enter the conversation when it comes to large new costs being imposed on customers, when maybe the data center developers who have this big energy demand, they need to be paying their fair share towards infrastructure. So really complex issue, a lot of smart people working on it. The leads are mostly those Northern Virginia land conservation groups.
All right, I think we have time for maybe one or two more before we wrap up. So I see there's a question that says, what about a proposed study of data center water and electricity requirements worldwide, or not worldwide, excuse me, statewide? So I think, is that asking if there's a study in the works, or?
So I think there's a bill on this. Bills are still being introduced as we speak, but I believe I know of an ally group who is working on a bill that at least would create a study of sort of the costs and impacts and unintended consequences to our electric grid from data center development, and whether the large data companies are socializing some of their costs onto us, the customer. So yeah, I think there's a study bill pending.
All right. One last call for questions. Give it a second to see if anything else trickles in. Going once, going twice. Like I said, we know this is a lot of information, so we will be making all of this information and the links and everything available to you all. We also went ahead and we put our emails in the chat. So if you have any questions, make sure to reach out to any of us and we'll try and help you out. For the rest of the panelists, is there anything you'd like to close out with?
I'll just mention, if you're in the Richmond area and you'd like some assistance navigating the new building or the process, we're happy to help with that. There is a new General Assembly building this year, so it's a little bit of a learning experience for all of us, but it's lovely. They have a cafeteria, and yeah, we're happy to help with that process or help show you around the building.
Is there a question about the slide deck being available? And that will be available, right? Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. We can go ahead and close this out.
Thanks, everybody.
See you.